topic upon which our great leader is badly confused. I understand it's not the only thing that overwhelms him, but here this one clearly does. As you can see, if you caught his latest condemnation of Zoran Mamdani, who's running for mayor of New York and who is a self-described socialist. For weeks now, Mr. Trump has said he wouldn't allow Mr. Mamdani to become the mayor, as if he had that power, that he would not stand by. So I guess maybe he's going to sit down. The bottom line is he kept calling Mr. Mamdani a socialist, and he did that taking a deep breath as if he was saying something remarkable. Now, Mr. Mamdani, to be fair, has never hidden the fact that he is a socialist. He's proud to be a socialist. So Mr. Trump's discovery isn't such a big deal. But then the most recent remark of Mr. Trump caught my attention. Mr. Trump, in the middle of denouncing Mamdani yet again for being a socialist, changed and made a self-criticism. That really got me going. Mr. Trump doesn't do that very often. He said he's not a socialist. He's a communist. And he took an even deeper breath as if he was really telling us something. Well, he wasn't. And I decided to take these few minutes to make sure that you understand what the difference is. Because here in the United States, very little attention has been paid to the difference. In fact, the tendency has been, for the last 75 years at least, to deal with socialism, communism, Marxism, anarchism, as if they were kind of synonyms, more or less the same thing. Nothing worth making distinctions among them. All of that's wrong. All of that's about the Cold War, and all of that's fading now. Pretty soon it won't be any more remarkable saying somebody's a communist than it now has become unremarkable that Mr. Mamdani and quite a few other politicians are socialists. But I want to explain that, and that's what I'm going to do. First of all, there is no country in the world, no nation, that has ever been or is now a communist society, organized in a communist way. Yes, I know you're used to the New York Times or the radio or the TV referring to countries as communist. But that's ignorance. That's not serious. Let me explain. The Soviet Union, which for most of the 20th century was the number one country like that, had a formal name: Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR. Notice, please, the name of the country used the word socialist. No one in the Soviet Union referred to it as communist. Only people far away and very hostile, like in Western Europe and the United States, referred to the Soviet Union as a communist society because they didn't understand the difference. Let me take a second example. How do the People's Republic of China spokespersons, from Xi Jinping on down, how do they refer to their country, China? Answer: China is, and I quote, socialism with Chinese characteristics. In other words, Russia and China, the preeminent examples, are both, by their own assistance and from day one, socialist and not communist. Well, what is the name communist about then? It's the name of a political party. In Russia, it was called the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. In China, it's called the Communist Party of China. It's a political party that believes in, favors, and operates a socialist economy. They've made that clear for at least the last half century. If it hasn't penetrated Mr. Trump's understanding, that's kind of on him, not on them. Wow. So what exactly do these words mean? Well, first, a little history. Where does the name Communist Party come from? Well, it comes from, oh, guess what? Socialism. You see, in the 19th century, socialist parties began to grow in Western Europe, eventually in the United States, and so on. Then the Russian Revolution happened in 1917. That was the first case in which socialists, by their own label, won political power in a country, Russia, and so declared it to now be a union of Soviet socialist republics. They had established socialism. And they appealed, the Russians did, Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky, they appealed to socialists around the world to support the first country, Russia, in which socialists had taken power. That appeal was persuasive to some socialists, but not to others. Those who wanted to support the Soviet Union as the first great and therefore the leader of global socialism wanted to mark their view by taking a different name. They adopted the name communist. So let's do it again. Socialists, to support the Soviet Union, changed their name to communist. There were no communist parties or none of any importance before the Russian Revolution. They all emerged in 1920, 1919, 1921 as socialists in each country split over whether they would be pro-Soviet, i.e. communists, or critical of the Soviet brand of socialism, and then they would keep the name socialist. And that's how we've had it to the present. Communist is a name of a political party. It's not the name of an economic system. Well, then what is socialism as an economic system? There are three kinds, and they seem to be focused particularly on what the role of the government is in an economy of employers and employees. An economy like our own here, but with different role for the government. So one kind of socialism, sometimes called Scandinavian socialism, because Sweden and Denmark and Norway and Finland used this kind of system, believed in it for a long time. In that kind of socialism, most of the business of the country is done by private enterprises that look just like those we have here in the United States. You would say they are capitalist enterprise, privately owned, dealing with one another in a market, employing workers, all the rest of it. But what's unique about them is a very big role for the government. The government is called in to put a floor under the level of wages so that nobody can be very poor, to provide free government services of all kinds, medical care, education, transportation, subsidized housing, and so on. It was often called capitalism with a human face when the socialists were powerful enough to win power in the state and make the state offset the harsh edges of a capitalist system. Britain and the United States were among those capitalisms that wanted the government to have a very limited role, whereas Scandinavians wanted the government to have a big regulatory role, heavily taxation, but heavily providing everybody with many, many free or subsidized services. The second kind of socialism is the Soviet Russian kind. They were, like the Scandinavians, taxing and providing lots of services, but they went one further. They didn't believe that government could regulate private enterprise unless the government, not private individuals, owned and operated the enterprises. So in Russia, the industry and more over time of the agriculture was run, owned, and operated by the government. So that's another kind of socialism. There were still private enterprises in Russia, always, many. But the dominant position, big industry, was owned by the government. The third example is the People's Republic of China. You know, socialism with Chinese characteristics. What's unique about China is that they are a hybrid. Half the economy is private capitalist enterprises, owned and operated by private Chinese, Japanese, American, European businessmen and women who own and operate capitalist enterprises, selling shares of stock and all the rest. The other half of the Chinese economy is a government-run, government-owned and operated industries. You might say China is a hybrid, a 50-50 mix of the United States and Britain, half, and the Soviet Union, half. Those are the three big kinds of socialism that are operating in Russia, China, Scandinavia at various times. These days, you have only a little of it left in Scandinavia, a little of it in Russia. The big example is China, which has this hybrid, half state, half private. All right, then what is communism? Communism is all of what I've just said, but taken an enormous step further. Communism is when you have an enterprise owned and operated by the workers in it. No separation between those who own and have all the power on the one hand and those who do the work on the other. No separation between the employer and the employee. It's a communal system, or if you like, a communist system, because the gap between employer and employee has been eliminated. It's what the people who do this call a democratized enterprise. It doesn't have a small group of people at the top, unelected, unchosen by the employees, who have all the power to decide what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the product. No. It's communistic because it's a community that operates the enterprise, and it isn't divided. Everybody has one vote to decide what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the product. That would be a communist enterprise. It is an open question in each country whether the Socialist Party there or the Communist Party there are in favor of a socialist economy or one that has gone beyond to become a communist economy as well. So far, no country has yet tried to establish a genuinely communist economy, one in which factories, offices, and stores were owned, operated, and run by the workers and nobody else. But here's an irony. For thousands of years, workers, whether in a slave system or a feudal system or a capitalist system or even earlier, there have always been workers fascinated, attracted by the idea maybe we would be better off if we made the workplace a democratic community rather than a hierarchical top-down small group of people, the owner, the operator, the board of directors of the corporation. Maybe if we democratized the enterprise, we'd all be better off. That communist idea is very old, and it resurfaces from time to time, particularly when the system within which experiments like that are made is falling apart. We, you and I, living through a period of time in which the capitalist system is falling apart, at least in this part of the world. And of course, that's why socialist ideas, and coming down the pike behind them, communist ideas, different though they be, are becoming more and more part of people's figuring out where to go next in human evolution. And of course, those people who are terrified of leaving the system they know, no matter how unequal or dysfunctional it is, they're the ones who don't want to know anything about it, who don't care about the difference between socialism and communism, who deal with them as if they were the same, and who denounce anybody who wants to go in that direction with whichever word they think will do the most damage, like Mr. Trump. If interventions like this strike you as useful, helpful to understand what we're all going through, then please share this video with others, co-workers, friends, neighbors, family. That's why we make them. And of course, if you can help us financially cover the costs, that would be enormously appreciated as well. Thank you.